and welcome, and thank you for joining us today, where we are talking about mental health. The struggle is real, affirming our strengths in the Black community. This is a partnership between Howard University and blackdoctor.org. And this month, this topic that we will address is Black women in leadership, balancing success, family, and mental health. So just to introduce myself, we had a change in guest speakers, but I'm sure you will be ever so pleased once I introduce her and you hear her story. But for me, I'm Dr. Cheryl Neverson. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been practicing for more than 25 years. I earned my PhD in social work from Howard University. And I am currently an adjunct professor at Howard University in the School of Social Work. And I'm also the Senior Vice President of Clinical Strategy at Volunteers of America, Chesapeake, and the Carolinas. And my featured guest today is Dr. Tashika Green. She is a pinch hitter. She jumped in at the last minute for me, as a beautiful professional will do. And she is a transformational servant leader who leads with her heart, and she has a mind of a leader. She is an influential educator, transformational coach, thought-provoking speaker, visionary, 20-time best-selling author, and much, much more. She's been featured in the Harvard University School of Education, Harvard edX course, and many other features and segments. She has over 22 years of experience as an education that allow her to give birth to her organization, to Everything There Is a Season. And in this organization, she has many components. To Everything There Is a Season Learning Academy and Consultants, the Deborah C. Arthur Bolgen Business and Leadership Development Institute, to Everything There Is a Season Publishing, the Deborah C. Arthur Bolgen Memorial Foundation, Women of Virtue, Walking in Excellence, and many, many more. I am so honored to have her as a guest on this show, and we will be sure to hear from her, and you do not want to miss her story of how she balances success, family, and mental health. So let's get started. I want you to look at this slide, and I want you to type in the chat. Type in the chat, what's the difference? What do you see here? So you have two people about to start a race. You have a white male and you have a Black female. And the white male looks over and says, what's the matter? It's the same distance. It is the same distance. But I want you to type in the chat, what is the difference? What do you see? So you have the white guy, he's over here in his business suit. He's looking at her, smiling, ready to go. And you see his two little hurdles. But you see the Black sister over there in her path. She's starting off with a ball and chain. She doesn't have a smile on her face. And look at the obstacles that she faces. So you'll see she got barbed wire fences. I see a alligator, brick walls over there. And even right before she get the finish line, I see arrows and spikes. And so although it may be the same distance for a Black woman, look at what she has to go through to get to the finish line. And again, he didn't see that. He says, what's the matter? I mean, we're going the same place, right? So look at the obstacles. But guess what? As a Black woman, she's like, bring it. Look at her face. She's like, I'm here for it. And she is determined, and she will race, and she will try to win. And 9 times out of 10, she just might, even with the obstacles in place. So women are already significantly underrepresented in leadership. Okay, so just with that, it's unprecedented numbers that we're seeing now with women leaving organizations and not being represented there. And companies are now struggling to hold on to the relatively few women leaders that they already have. And these dynamics are even more pronounced for women of color. So when you look at the pipeline, like who's coming into this workforce? So how do we bring women into these leadership positions? And women, especially women of color, when I talk about women of color, I'm not only talking about Black women, and you'll see a little bit more in the slide that when I do talk about Black women, the numbers and the data is even less. So when I talk to you about women of color, I want you to think about all women of color. But women and women of color, they're still dramatically underrepresented in corporate America. And this is especially true for those in senior leadership. So in this study, only 1 in 4 C-suite leaders, which are your CEOs, your chief operating officers, your chief financial officers, only 1 in 4 is a woman, and only 1 in 20 is a woman of color. So what does that mean? So it means that for every 100 men who are promoted from entry level to manager, there's 87 women promoted at that same pace, and only 82 of women of color are promoted. So it comes down to there's just simply too few women to promote to those leadership levels. So as you continue to promote, the pool in the pipeline continues to be reduced. So what does that look like? For every woman at the director level who gets promoted to the next level, 2 people leave. So as everyone is promoted, 2 decide to leave. They can't take it anymore. So here's the diagram I wanted you to take a look at. And you can see here, it compares white men, men of color, white women, and women of color. Remember, women of color, that includes all women of color. And you'll see here that from the beginning at entry level, white men have a 33% at the entry rate, whereas women of color is 19%. They're neck and neck with men of color. But still, you go down, they get promoted to manager. You see the white men, their percentage goes up. White women, their percentage goes down a little, but look at the women of color. It goes from 19% to 14%. When you look at those being promoted to senior manager and director, it goes down even further. You have 10% on down. You see the VP level, the senior vice president, and then you're at the C-suite level where you see, I'm not sure if you can see the numbers there, but it's 5%. So you have 5%. You go from 19% to 5%. You can see the numbers decrease, as opposed to white men who go from 33% to 61%. So when you think about women in the workplace, if companies don't take action, they're going to lose. These trends are showing that you will lose more women leaders. And why is this important? Why do we even need them? Right? Women leaders are investing more of their time and energy in managing people, creating different allies. And these are the champions in our DE&I, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So they go in here to these companies, they're making a big difference. They are leading the transitions, being more supportive. They make people in the workplace feel more inclusive. And especially with the next generation of women leaders that we're looking at, this is what they need. This is what they want, especially younger women. They want and they expect this. And if we lose women leaders of color, they have no one to look up to, no one to aspire to, and then they'll start to drop off. And when you ask them what they want, 49% of women leaders say that they want flexibility. Is one of the top 3 things to consider when they want to decide to join a job, compared to 34% of men who say that flexibility is important. So what you're starting to see is what we call the great breakup. Women are saying, you know what, I can't do this. They're demanding more from work. They're leaving their companies in unprecedented numbers to get it. They're starting their own business. You see a lot of women, because they can't get to that senior level executive in an organization, they start their own organization, which you'll hear a little bit later, so that they can become their own CEO in their own leadership. So that's what they're starting to do. We also see that many women are switching jobs for better opportunities or becoming those entrepreneurs. And some are just considering downshifting and leaving the workforce altogether. So you have people saying, you know what, enough is enough. I can't do it anymore. And they just don't even go, you know, they take a lesser paying job for the less stress because of the challenges that they face. In this past year, we saw 29% of women who thought about reducing their hours, thought about taking a less demanding job or leaving work. So you see, this is backed up with statistics. So what are they saying? They're saying, bye, bye, bye. I'm not staying here no more. And why? Because of certain things like microaggressions. So some of the reasons that they're stepping away, you know, women overall face microaggressions, but women of color, especially Black women, and you'll hear about this a little bit more, they're facing microaggressions in unprecedented numbers, such as taking them for, they see women as being a less of a role than they really are. They may have just belittling talk that's done to them. And so they're taking a step back and they're saying, you know what? I think this is enough for me. They're feeling overwhelmed and underappreciated. We see that women are doing a lot more than their counterparts to prove themselves. So when they do this, they become overwhelmed and they feel underappreciated. Another reason why they leave is because they feel like they are not even recognized. So when you think about pay equity, pay is not even equal when it comes to women overall, but especially women of color. They feel stretched thinner than men in leadership, and they are far more likely to feel the burnout. You have 43% of women leaders who feel burnout compared to only 31% of men at the same level. So what do we know? What do we know about Black women in particular in the workplace? We know that women overall are having a worse experience than men. We also know that women of color are having a worse experience than white women. And finally, Black women in particular are having the worst experience of all when it comes to how to manage in the workplace. So let's take a look about this. So maybe they just don't want it. You know, maybe they just don't work hard enough. That's not true. So we see that Black women leaders are more ambitious than their counterparts, and they face greater barriers to advancement. And so I'm gonna back that up. When I say more ambitious than women at their level, we see that 59% of Black women leaders want to be top executives compared to 49% of white women leaders overall. All righty. And another interactive activity that I want you to participate in is one of the main reasons why Black women are leaving in unprecedented numbers are these microaggressions. So, as I explain what this is, I want you to type in the chat what you think a microaggression was towards yourself, or you feel like a microaggression was towards someone that you worked with, particularly as it relates to a Black woman. So I'm stating here that all women experience some microaggressions, but Black women in particular. And microaggressions they could be verbal, behavioral, or environmental indignities that communicate hostile, derogatory, or negative racial slights and insults to a target person or a target group. You see here, this picture depicts it looks like a bicultural woman. And what she says is her microaggression that she experiences, you're the whitest Black person that I know. How many people have heard that before? I know I have. I've heard you talk like a white person. So you hear those things all the time. So let's look at this one. These are some common ones that I came up with. I can't wait to see what you guys put in the chat. But have you heard this? You're so articulate. Is it they're not learning how to pronounce your name? So they'll give you a nickname, even though you didn't tell them, because they don't want to learn how to pronounce your name. People who say, when I see you, I don't see race, I don't see color. I've had this one. Can I touch your hair? Let me touch it. being made to feel invisible, being overtalked and not recognized. So, for an example, being in a meeting, in an executive level meeting, I had a person who complained that every time I make a comment or a suggestion, no one says anything. They just go on to the next topic. Or I try to say something and I feel like I'm being overtalked. Or you might say to yourself, didn't I just say that? Somebody else said it that didn't look like you and get the credit, but it's something that you just said. They rephrased it. I even had a presentation called Am I on Mute? Because sometimes you feel like, hello, can you hear me? Because you feel ignored. People who say, you have good hair. Um, oh, you're so over dramatic. Being the Black voice for all, being, you raise your voice a little bit, you're the angry Black woman. Or being told that you're only here because they needed some diversity in the organization. Assumptions about your seniority role, questioning your status, and the saying, oh, you're pretty dark skinned. So interesting to see what you guys put in the chat. Put your microaggressions. Maybe I missed some. Do I need to add some here? All right. So as Black women, sometimes we feel like we are against all odds. And what does that mean? So Black women are significantly, again, underrepresented in leadership roles. Black women are much less likely to be promoted to manager. We saw that in the previous slide. We saw what the percentage was for women of color, but for every 100 men promoted to manager, only 58 Black women are promoted. And for every 100 men hired into a manager role, only 64 Black women are hired. So again, they are competing. Women are competing against so many different obstacles that they face that they're starting to make other choices and other decisions. Here's another chart that talks just about Black women in leadership. And so what you see is the little tiny orange dot that you see. It's a little sliver of a line. That's how many Black women are in vice president roles. And this is 1.6% of Black women compared to 57% of white men. And when compared to our makeup of the US population, Black women make up about 7.4%. That's that little dotted line of the US population. So we fall way under percentage wise. But if you see where the dotted line is for white males that make up 35% of the US population, they hover way above in these leadership positions. And when you look at the C-suite, those corporate level positions for Black women, it goes even lower to 1.4%, whereas the white men, it increases, making that disparity even greater. So with all of these things in place, that women face in the workforce, we also have to deal with mental health. And so Black women, we face significant disparities in mental health, whether you're in a leadership position or not, just overall as a Black woman. We play multiple roles in society and face racial and social injustices. And simultaneously, we can experience racism, sexism, and at times financial inequality because of what we see and what we experience as women. And it's facts to show that our income is way less. Our pay equity is way off. Others believe that this same concept makes us Black women one of the most resilient groups around. So although just like if you can take your thoughts back to that picture we saw in the beginning, yeah, we got all of those struggles, but you saw she had that fight in her face. Like, I'm not giving up. She didn't look at it and say, I can't do this. So that's that resiliency piece. But what happens is sometimes that can play a huge, major, important part on our mental health. And that's what this presentation is about. How do we balance that? So when I talk about Black women and mental health, nearly 1 in 5 US adults, regardless of race, will experience a mental illness. This was in 2020. That's 52.9%, 52.9 million people in 2020. 2020 was what? Pre-COVID. Those numbers have skyrocketed since then. So we're still collecting data on those numbers. But trust me, recent data has shown an increase, especially for people of color and Black people in particular. Um, what we see is that most mental illnesses go untreated in this population, especially in populations of color. And research suggests that the adult Black community is 20% more likely to experience a serious mental health issue, such as a major depression or anxiety disorder. One of the things that I wanted to tell you is in a recent study, what we found was, and this was in a study with, it was reported at Columbia University School of Nursing. But what they found was that Black women, and this just came out, I think it was this week, and they said Black women's symptoms of depression looks different. And it's often reported as maybe like self-criticism, sleep disturbances, um, lack of sexual drive. And it's not the typical hopelessness or sadness as we may see in the general population. Not to say that that is not experienced, but it looks different. What does it look like in Black women? And what that means for me is that many Black women are going underdiagnosed and undertreated because we don't pick up those symptoms that they experience differently than our counterparts. And based on its findings is what we're wanting to see is that, again, we need to start looking at different symptoms when it comes to depression and anxiety in Black women. And what we start to see is also in the news, you'll see celebrities and people who look so happy one minute, and then you hear about them committing suicide or, having struggles with mental health. And what you see is what we call atypical depression. Is for that moment in time, I can be happy, I can be in a good space. That's not typical of what you see someone experiencing depression, but it does not mean they're not depressed because after that event and they feel good, they go back into that depression. And when it's that time when they go back is when they make these decisions that can have a major impact on life or death. So I say that to say we have to continue to look through the mask that women put on. And we'll talk a little bit more about that too. So the strong Black woman, that's not just a random saying. It has been studied. What does this mean, the strong Black woman? We'll take something and study it to death. So Black feminist theories, they argue that putting this tag or this concept on women, it creates internal hardships. And we want to block those, like we want to block sadness. We want to block feelings of hopelessness. We want to block feelings of depression, which kind of links to that study, right? To say we don't see sadness, hopelessness, and depression in Black women. We see something else because the strong Black woman syndrome blocks that. So it comes across as something else. This term, strong Black womanhood, is described culturally, is multidimensional, and it's helped Black women to overcome different things like oppression, racism, and sexism because we had to endure that in order to be able to survive. So it is a survival technique, but it can come with some stuff too. It comes with both cognitive characteristics, which is how we think about things, stress, how we cope with stress, and it also emotional suppression, how we suppress our emotions, how we have self-reliance. I can do it myself, that strong Black woman, and how we have to be caregivers. So we're caregivers first and foremost. We want to make sure we take care of everyone. Emerging research has said that has linked the strong Black woman schema or terminology to things such as depression, anxiety, and binge eating for African American women. So the strong Black woman, too often women of color, we try to muscle our way through depression and anxiety and try to do all of these things on our own. So this woman Her name is Erica Richards, and she is a psychiatrist. She's a psychiatrist out of Hopkins um, medical study. And she says that there's a feeling in a lot of Black communities that women have to be strong and stoic. Women are so busy taking care of everyone else, their partners, their elderly parents, and their children. They don't take care of themselves. However, women should be reminded that attending to their own needs, whether physical or emotional, doesn't make you weak. It makes you better able to care for your loved ones in the long run. So we embody that strong Black woman syndrome with a passion. So another type in the chat. I talked about women have so many roles. Who are we? What kind of roles do women play? So to say that we have to do so much, we balance so much, I want you to talk about in the chat what are some of these roles. And I'm going to show you what we've come up with. So you have, you know, that song Superwoman. That fits perfectly into this. So you have women, and somebody can play all of these roles. I probably do. Mother, wife, daughter, well, not a wife, daughter, caretaker, breadwinner, single mom, nurturer, protector, cook, housekeeper, sister, friend, healer, lover, counselor, leader, organizer, provider, co-worker. And I'm sure you all listening in today can do two more rows of what the roles that we have for a woman. So it's a lot. So here's a clip that I took from social media, but I thought it was super funny and super relevant to what we're doing. All right, so this is an exhausted Black woman, and she says, so you're telling me I'm supposed to keep my child alive, educate and play with them, and keep them off their tablet and TV, keep the house clean, keep my relationship alive, cook meals, and keep track of the bills, have my own career and aspirations and goals, manifest my dream life, meditate, go out with friends, and keep my friendships alive because it's not all about being a mom, be a size 8, and walk 10,000 steps a day, and work out 5 times a week, and eat healthily, and do all of that on 4 hours of sleep. Okay, cool. I can do that. How many of us feel like that? I know I do. And I know that I am not alone. So don't act like it. So, all right, here's the part of the presentation that I'm looking forward to. I want to thank so much Dr. Tashika L. Green. It looks like an R, but I think the picture is over too much, but it is Green, Dr. Green. And I want her to be able, I want to welcome her, and I want to have her to talk about who she is and to share her story about how she balances her career, her family, and her mental health. So let us go into it. So Dr. Green, just kind of give us, I did a opening introduction about who you are. So I don't want you to go deep into that. I want you to kind of talk about your journey from being, your journey into womanhood and into being a CEO and a leader and your family and all of that. So talk a little bit about your journey to where you are now.
Absolutely. And thank you, Dr. Cheryl, for having me on today. I'm so excited to be here. When you were sharing, I was like, yep, I know all about that. Yep, I know all about that, like agreeing and everything and just looking at the data. But, my journey as I started out, I always tell people that I was built on the shoulders of Black women. And I know what we use that word strong Black woman. But what I realized in the word strength is that when you are vulnerable and you expose your weaknesses, that's where you find your strength. And so I was raised on the shoulders of these three great women, my mother, the late Deborah C. Alford Bulgin, my grandmother, Alberta Alford, and my great grandmother, Rena Johnson. I was built on their shoulders. And I was raised by a single mom. So I was raised by a single mom, and my mom sacrificed so much of herself, of her time, of her resources to ensure that I had the best of everything that I needed to have. Growing up in a very small town in Maryland that was predominantly white, that I too had to push through a lot of things, even as a child, to become in the places that I were. And I can remember when I was in elementary school, I was in the gifted and talented programs, and the children in the program did not look like me. And they were offered opportunities that I did not get. But my mother, who was a strong Black woman, as we would say, she advocated for me, and not only advocated for me, but she advocated for all children, because she really said equity is just simply this: it's just doing what's right, simply just doing what's right for all. And so she advocated for that. So as you know, I was raised on the shoulders of these strong Black women. They were advocating for me. They were, nurturing me. They were ensuring that, education was first, and then you're continuing that and just grooming me as a leader. So even as in middle school and high school, I was a senior class president. So always developing me and nurturing me as a leader and building me up so that I would be able to follow the path that God had intended for me, as I am doing now. And so that evolved into going into, college and things of like that nature. And I tell people, people see the product, but they don't always understand the process that it takes to get there. And I was not your typical student that went through school in 4 years. No, it took me 7 years, because I got pregnant. I was a single mom myself, and then I had to go through and repeat some courses and do some work. But once my son was born, I really realized that, okay, Tashika, you really have to grow up and grow up quickly. Because I always say that legacy is not what you accomplish, but is what you prepared others to do. How are you preparing your son and all your children that will come after that? So after that, just continue to evolve in my work in education, starting off as a classroom teacher, and then evolving. My last position with an organization was a regional assistant superintendent. And even in all of that, a part of me sometimes felt like I had to prove myself to people as being a leader and as being a black woman in leadership in predominantly white situations, that I had to prove myself. And it wasn't until I was a assistant principal that the superintendent of the school district actually pulled us all aside, the Black leaders in the district, and said, I want to sit down with you and let's really talk about what has hindered you as a Black person in this organization. And we had those real transparent conversations. And then after that, things began to change. And I became a principal, and then, director of school improvement. And I had some other leadership opportunities in that organization. But after that, I realized that I needed more, Dr. Cheryl. I had got to a point where I became very comfortable and complacent as a leader, and I needed more. I needed a challenge. And so that's when I shifted to another organization that was predominantly Black women in leadership. And when I got to that organization, Dr. Cheryl, I was actually told that they don't like you. They don't want you here. They think you know everything. And I was told to just sit back, be quiet, and wait to be invited into the conversation. Now, that was kind of hard for me, because I tell people all the time, education is my calling, teaching is my gift, inspiring is my passion, and serving is my purpose. When I do what I do it with everything that's in me, my heart, my soul, and my mind. I love children, and I love to ensure that students are achieving and teachers are also changing their practices. So for me to sit in a room and just be quiet was just not me. But I had to do it because I had to learn, and I had to listen, and I had to find my way in a culture that was already developed and shaped. And I'm coming in so eager, anxious, ready for the challenge, ready for the change. But they're telling you, wait a minute, they don't like you. Like, how do you not like me? You don't even know me, right? If they don't want you here, how do you not want me here? I want to impact and make a difference. And so, sometimes we look at the competition of being another race, but sometimes the competition is the race within ourselves, of competing against other Black women, and how they don't celebrate you, how they just tolerate you. And so I sat back and I listened. And then after that, I always focus on evidence. And I love it. When you started sharing the data, I was like, yes, Dr. Cheryl, my girl. I always have this relentless focus on evidence. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? What are you noticing that you could contribute to make value and worth, so that they see the value and worth in you, that you're not proving anything anymore, but they see that you belong here and you're a part of that. And that's how I transitioned to that. But you know what, Dr. Cheryl? Things happen. I always tell people that, I just said it this weekend when I spoke in front of a group of women at a retreat. I said, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade, just build the whole stand. And so life gave me lemons because in a 5-minute conversation in a boardroom, I was making 6 figures at executive level position, couldn't go anywhere else. And then basically in 5 minutes, I like to say it this way, I was told deuces, right? Like you have to go. Like you have a choice. You either can do this, which is lower than your worth and what you stand for, or you can leave. And so most people would say that they were fired or eliminated from a position. I call it I was pushed into destiny. And so at that very moment, I had to grow up again, grow up really quick. I had to activate my faith, and I had to make up in my mind that I was not going to cast my pearls to swine, that everything that was in me, every talent, every strength, everything that I was prepared for to do, that this was the time for me to create, not see the opportunity, but to create the opportunity that existed before me and grab hold of it and run with it. And so from that day forward, I actually have been an educational consultant since 2018. Although I had been in business for 2014, I was kind of, you know how they say, your side hustle or things of that nature. I couldn't give it all that I had because I had this full time job. So in 2018, I was pushed into my destiny. And when I was pushed into my destiny in 2018, that's where I started to everything. There's a seasoned enterprises, which have the different pillars under it. So I have the to everything. There's a seasoned learning academy and consultants. And most of that, I do work with school districts and organizations, not just school district, because what I do is I help to change and I start with the mindset. Everything starts with the mindset, how you think, how you believe, your norms, your values. And so a lot of work that I go and I do with organizations around mindset so I can help them to leverage their talents and their skills and use it in the balcony and not the basement. And so that birthed so many other things. And I tell people now I'm at a place where I'm exceeding all expectations, discovering what I never knew existed, living in a place of victory, and I'm releasing all of the promises for my life. And I'm not going to stop until I win. And all those things you said about resilience and balance, I know we're going to get to that, but that's just a little bit of my journey. And along that journey, I got married in 2008. I've been married now since 2008. I have two children outside of my oldest son, 12 and 10. And I know you shared a little bit of my bio, but I do homeschool my children. And I decided to do that because I just saw that some of the things that were needed, in particular for my daughter who was diagnosed with ADHD and ODD and some anxiety issues, that they weren't in place. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to put these things in place. And I know that this is going to manifest something greater because what's good for my children are good for all. And so that started my mom is my teacher of homeschooling. So everything that happened in my journey, I tell people my pain has birthed purpose. And it has not only birthed purpose for me, but for others that I can help along the way and make things go right.
Well, that is so awesome. One of the things that I want to understand is how do you do it? Like you homeschool your children, you have these, professional, you're CEO of your organization and you do so much, you're a published author. Um, you make it look so easy. Your wife, your mother, all of those roles that I talked about, you have just about all of them.
Yes.
So how do you ever struggle sometimes to make things work for you? And what does that struggle look like? And my second question is how do you balance that out?
Absolutely. So that struggle I do have. And, one thing that I have learned most recently, and I've actually read this through the work of Dr. Beckett. He actually is the director at Yale, and he talks about giving yourself permission to feel, right? And I had to learn that for myself as I'm sharing with others that it's okay, that you have to give your space permission to feel. You have to understand your emotions. You have to be able to regulate them. You have to be able to label it. So even in his work that he has like these quadrants where you can identify words to name your how you're feeling. And sometimes it's not even there. Just like today, I had a meeting prior to us getting together, and I said, my word isn't on the chart. I was like, and the word I think I've been feeling lately is tension. And I was like, the tension is because where I am and where I want to be, I'm just trying to bridge that gap of how do I get there. And I'm so busy, and I like to not use the word busy, but I use the word purposeful. I'm so purposeful in doing the work that I'm not working on me. And so I have to understand that I got to give myself permission to feel. If I want to cry all day long, just let me cry. Okay. Because this is what I'm getting out and I'm expressing how I'm feeling. If I want to laugh at everything all day, then just let me laugh out loud because I'm giving myself permission to feel. If it's not a word if that exists, let me talk it out until I can get that word that actually exists. And so that's one thing that I do is I give myself permission to feel. And along with giving myself permission to feel, I had to learn that I had to prioritize myself. That Tashika is always inspiring. She's always serving. She's always giving. She's always pushing other people. But I also had to prioritize myself because we know the saying is that we can't pour from an empty cup. And so I had to give myself priority over me, the priority that I needed so that I could be in a place of peace, so that I could lean into joy, so that I could just be at a place that, when things happen, look at it not as an obstacle, but how do I navigate myself around that obstacle? How do I mitigate those things that's in my control? And so I had to prioritize myself. And also, as women and Black women, we don't like to say no and let go of some things. And I think I saw it in a quote or I heard it before that no is a complete sentence. And it's okay to walk away from some things because guess what? You're not missing anything because as you continue to give life, you're losing life when you start doing things that's not attached to your destiny. And so, really, Dr. Cheryl, I just had to give myself permission to feel. I had to prioritize myself. I had to, give the gift of goodbye and walk away from some things, say no. And then at the end of all of that, I always do this. I reflect. I reflect all the time. I always reflect who did I help today? How did I make things go right? And even who was I a hindrance to? Because sometimes you don't realize that you're hindering other people that needs to progress along the way. And so I give myself space to reflect and to assess and adjust. We don't practice until we get perfect. We practice until we grow. It's called progression. And so each and every day, I'm ensuring that I'm committed to me, I'm disciplined, and I'm being consistent with everything that I do.
That's awesome. I want to, I love the recommendations that you gave. I
Mhm.
think that, not only myself, but the women that are on this, who are watching this, and the people in their lives,
Mhm.
um, it's important to hear.
Mhm.
I did have a couple of other recommendations. I want to pull up the slides to talk a little bit more, and I want you to chime in if um, if you feel so impelled, because there was one slide that I wanted, one recommendation that you talked about that I have too, and I was like, I like your terminology, but these are some things that I pulled together, because me as well being a Black woman in leadership, these things apply to me as well too. And so these were some of the additional recommendations that I came up with, on three things. What can organizations do? What can individuals ourselves do? And what can family or our support systems do to kind of help Black women who are leaders who have this strong Black woman syndrome and who may be struggling with mental health, whether it's depression, anxiety, or anything else. And for organizations, and this is even entrepreneurs. So it's not just main organizations like the ones that I work in. It can be if you have your own organization like yourself, um, and you're an entrepreneur. But
Mhm.
the difference between a work-life balance versus work-life integration. So work-life balance to me implies that, okay, at 5 o'clock, I'm shutting down and I'm going to attend to my personal life. Not all women leaders can do that, especially entrepreneurs, because you find yourself working throughout the night. So when you try, you get frustrated because it's like I can't balance, But work life integration, especially now with since COVID and their flexible work schedule, says that okay, maybe at 2 o'clock I'm gonna go to the gym. I'm not gonna go early in the morning or go after work. I'm gonna go at 2 o'clock. I'm gonna integrate it. This morning I got up, I did a Zoom call. I put some clothes in the washing machine. I got back and I did some work. I might have to run to the store so that I can pick up some groceries, cook dinner. I may have to go some workspaces. I know at my job they have a meditation room. Maybe I'm gonna meditate in the middle of the day. So what can you do to blend that in so that for me, I know that I don't close my computer at 5 o'clock, that sometimes I might have to check an email or send a message at 9 o'clock at night. And integration is in a healthy way, making sure that you're able to balance things, um, you know, within the within themselves, like integrating them? What's the terminology that you use?
Yes, so I use the terminology healthy mixture because what I realize is that when you balance, it means you're giving everything an equal part. So
Hmm.
I can't give my husband the same equal part that I give my children. I can't give my business the same equal part that I give my family. I can't give my foundation the same equal part. The books that I write, and so I had to have a healthy mixture. And with that healthy mixture, I also had to understand that it wasn't time management, it was the task management. What am I filling up in the time as I relate to the different tasks that I need to do? And then I brought my family into the work that I do. So, as I, have evolved into these different pillars under my business, I brought my husband into the business. I brought my children into the business. And so even this weekend at the women retreat, I'm thinking, oh, I'm going for rest, taking care of myself. I brought my 12-year-old daughter-in-law, and it was the best weekend I think we've ever had because
Hmm.
not only did it allow me to pour in other women, it allowed me to pour right into my daughter, and she poured back into me. She told me some things, Mom, you're too strong. She said, you're too weak, and people are going to take your weaknesses, and you need to say this and do this. I was like, little girl, take a back seat. But at least, we had some conversations and we spent time together. That is a healthy mixture, And so when I think about that, and then when I got back and knowing that I had to see my husband in 3 days, I had to go speak again. But what happened? He came out with me, he supported me, we went to dinner. So it's this healthy mixture. It's not a balance for me because I can't give everything the same equal part. Because believe it, Dr. Cheryl, I tried.
Yeah.
I tried. And it took me to a place where I literally said exhausted, that I was pulled on the side of a road calling 911 because I did not know what was going on with me. I couldn't even make it home. I had to pull in the parking lot. The ambulance had to take me to the hospital. And they said, you are exhausted and you need to rest. And I did not know how to rest. I was sleeping, but I wasn't resting. And I had
Right.
to get to a place of rest. And so, with that being said, I like to have this healthy mixture. I like to ensure that the task within the time that I have is something that I can do. And the last thing that I also do when it comes to this healthy mixture is I don't have a to-do list. I have a becoming list because
I like that.
those to-do lists will boggle you down. And then what you don't finish today, they become your to-do list tomorrow. And then what I noticed is I didn't no longer have to-do lists. I had folders, I had books, I had binders, I had note paper. Where did I write this? What am I supposed to do this? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I had to dismantle all of that and have a becoming list. Who are you becoming? And how are you going to get there? And how does all of this fit into the work that you need to do? So that's what I call it, a healthy mixture, managing your tasks and have a becoming list rather than a to-do list.
I love that. I love that. And when I talk about organizations, I'm like organizations and companies need to, and entrepreneurs understand and offer employees or especially your leaders work-life integration or mixture, something different than the typical work-life balance.
Mhm.
So there's different things to suit different people. Um,
Absolutely. And can I
yeah.
add one thing, Dr. Cheryl, because I
Hmm.
noticed on your list here of mental health, self-care, removing the mask.
Yes.
And I wanted to start with mental health because one part of my story that's so impactful, I didn't get into this, but if afterwards I'll tell my information and people can read about it. I lost my mom, Deborah Bulgin, in 2010. She was 53 years old. I never saw her sick. And in February of 2010, she was diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer. And in 30 days, she had passed away. But the cancer started as an ulcer that resulted into a bleeding ulcer. And then when she could no longer eat, was vomiting, they tried to do some surgery. And when they opened her up, they saw it had metastasized to her liver. And so because of that, I always tell people to make sure you take care of yourself because my mom didn't, I don't believe, really die from the cancer. I believe she died of the things that brought on the cancer because she didn't take care of herself. And so self-care is definitely a priority for me. And I do things, I do a lot of holistic things. I mean, I take time out to do cupping and dry needling and, things of that nature. I take time to have a massage once a month, but most of all, I take time to sit still, to pray, to meditate, and to hear clarity from God and to glean in that wisdom and to walk in it, not just to glean from it, but to apply it. And that's my number one of self care. And also, I learned that through that, Dr. Cheryl, in 2010, that I had just been covering it up. Like I had been
Mhm.
covering up my losses and my griefs, and I had never really got to the root. And so in 2021, one, I actually did begin to see a therapist at that time because I had to get to the root of what is really happening with Tashika because I keep going. You know, that strong Black woman, right? I
Yeah.
keep going. But what is my weakness? I'm ready to expose that now in a safe place so that I can address that, so that I can continue to, really get to the places that I need to, not for myself, my family, but for others. And then the last one, removing the mask. When first going into business, especially in the area that we're in it, that we're in the DMV, it's almost that it's like this quote unquote you got to fit in type of atmosphere and culture. And I was trying to do that, but that wasn't who I was. And so I learned, you know what? I'm just gonna throw this box away. I'm gonna remove the mask, and I'm gonna be Tashika Lanice Green. That's who I'm gonna be. And after that, God has done so many great things in my life. And I said to myself, if I only have an audience of one, long as I impacted one, then I know I made a difference.
Absolutely. And I love that you went into that because that's exactly what we can do. Speaking from experience too, sometimes you do need to go and check your mental health. And
Absolutely.
that may be seeing a therapist. The self-care, once you sometimes you had to remove a barrier in order to be able to do. I watch influencers and people on social media, and they're very influential, and they say, get up, go eat well, make sure you exercise, make sure you do this. And I sit there and sometimes I look and I'm like, why? Something is blocking me from doing that. And
Hmm.
it's not as easy for some people to just get up and go do it. If it was that easy, it would be that easy, but it's not. Some people need to get that barrier. Like you said, what's this barrier that I'm facing? And that's where that mental health come in. You talked about the self-care, removing the mask. Sometimes too, that can mean like for certain people, I envision like carrying your purse and in the car you feeling sad. I've heard people tell me, I'm so sad. I cry, but once I get to where I am, you put that mask on and people really, like you said, be honest with yourself. One of my good friends, Madeline, she told me that I was like, I'm so stressed and I don't know what to do and da 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 da. She was like, I would never know because you don't show it.
Right.
You carry yourself so well. And I'm your good friend, and I would never know how stressed you were. You
Mhm.
have to say something. You have to open your mouth because nobody knows what you're going through. I'm your friend. Talk to somebody. Let them know how you feel. Let them know what you're going through. And I appreciated her so much for that. Because I'm thinking, well, they should know. Don't they see what I'm doing?
Absolutely.
Not
Absolutely.
the case.
Absolutely.
So yeah, one of the things that I wanted to mention too is for just to kind of go back to organizations, not only recognizing the difference between work-life balance, mixture, and integration, but requiring a mental health day. Some people say, oh, you can use your sick leave or you can do this. Some universities and schools say, we're all closed. I know Howard University does it. We're closed on this day, everything for a mental health day. So
Mhm.
just kind of catching up with that and maybe incorporating that, not just say take it when you want to, but today we are closed. Today is a mental health day as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. And just to add to that, if you don't mind, like when your body sends you signals, listen, right? And what you said was so profound because people say the same thing about me, like you manage stress and everything so well, you never know when you're stressed. And it started to really show to me when, I got alopecia and like when did this happen? And when you start to have heart palpitations, when did this happen? And so even my doctor said your body sends you triggers and you handle it so well. And these are your triggers saying, wait a minute, you're a little stressed. Stop, listen, and give your space that time to rest. And even last year, from July until December, I had to listen to the triggers and just give myself space to rest and really, again, prioritize what was important because I had got to a point where, Dr. Cheryl, I couldn't walk. I could not walk. My husband had to help me and things of that nature. And to come find out, it was a cyst on my spine and sciatica. But my body was sending me a signal because I was, being purposeful and doing things I didn't even know. And it was like, you need to rest and you need to take care of yourself. So I urge you, everyone that's listening, please take care of yourself. And when your body gives you a signal, listen, respond, and just be at a place of rest. Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. And then what can I do? What can family members do? The first thing I have is don't offer help, just do it. Another shout out to a good friend, Danielle. One day, and I was really going through it, but I was just to myself. I had my mask on, and she called me and she said, "We're going to coffee, and I will not have coffee, and I will not take no for an answer." And she bullied me into going, but it was the best thing. And she just sat there and listened to me. And as leaders, we're not going to typically ask for help.
Mm-mm.
So for family that's out here that supports you, for you to say to certain people, "Oh, just let me know what you need." Being a strong Black woman, they are caregivers. They don't reach out. They don't necessarily ask for help. Not that that's a good thing, because my next thing is this perceived social support. When we think there's nobody out here who can help us, but there actually is. We just have to speak up and ask for that help. So I just want to thank my friend Danielle, who said, just come on, I'm going to take you. And sometimes that's what you need to do. You need to say, "Okay, let's stop. We're going to lunch." And the thing that got me is, I won't take no for an answer.
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
I went, and it was and it wasn't about her, because I was like, "Oh Lord, what does she need? What's going on with her?"
Mm-hmm.
But it was about me. She listened. She's like, "I'm here to listen to what you're going through. You do a
Yeah.
lot for everybody else." So that was a very powerful moment in my life. And I think for family and support systems, do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So this last thing, you hear these wellness tips a lot. So I won't read each one out, but it's what we talked about. Get good rest. It's the difference between rest and sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what you said. Move more.
Yeah.
Try to move around. That with the exhausted woman to 10,000 steps, maybe you got to balance that a little bit better, but just get them moving a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Eat well, connect with your friends, connect with your family, meditate, some type of meditation. Know your limits.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to your body. Those are things that are really key to maintaining your wellness.
Mm-hmm.
This next slide, uh, it may work. This is a video, so it's embedded here. So let's see if, not sure it'll play, but if it doesn't, I'll make sure that it plays on our when we post this on the YouTube channel. I'll make sure that there's a link to it there. But this is just a video with Nia Long. It's on social media, and it just talks about being a powerful Black woman. And so it doesn't look like we can play it here, but I will embed it in the link and attach it so you can watch it at a later time. It's only maybe 60 seconds, so it's not that long. So I want to get to the end of this, and I want to say thank you for listening in. You see the Black women on the side, and as a Black woman leader, what can you do for us, you may ask? And you'll see it on their shirts. You can love us, support us,
Yeah.
protect us, hear us, and pay us.
I love it.
Yes. So if you want to contact me, my contact information and Dr. Tashika Green's contact information is here. Please reach out. We love to talk about this. This is our passion. And we are here to support and give any information or advice. And hopefully you can share this presentation with someone who needs to hear it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.